you know from psychology that we have two hemispheres in the brain, okay? A right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. The right hemisphere is the creative, emotional, caring hemisphere. The left is the logical, analytical, utilitarian hemisphere, okay? So right does art, maybe left does math. Okay, we know this from simple psychology. Now, there's an American psychologist named Julian Jaynes. And he proposes a really interesting theory. His theory is, actually what's happening is the right hemisphere is receiving information from the universe, vibrations from the universe. And the left hemisphere is interpreting this information into reality. Okay? All right? So remember, we discussed Kant. What does Immanuel Kant say? Immanuel Kant says that there are two realities, the noumena, the world, the things in themselves, and the phenomena, the things to us. Okay? So what happens is that our brain interacts with the noumena and then filters it back into the phenomena, okay? And it uses a filter, time and space, in order to perceive things, okay? Hegel says that this noumena is the Geist, okay, the universe. And as we discussed, the universe are just vibrations, okay? Vibrations. And so, if you apply all this to this theory, what's happening is our right brain is receiving these vibrations. And then our left brain is just transforming these vibrations into everyday reality, okay? Then the question then is, how do we interpret these vibrations? Well, for most of human history, we've interpreted them as just gods and spirits. Okay? And even though it's not factual, it is truthful in that it allows us to better understand the universe, and it better allows us to understand ourselves, okay? By embracing this model of the brain, we have access to wisdom, okay? The wisdom of Homer and the Greeks. And that's why back then, the Greeks are much more creative and wise than we are today, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, because what we've done today is we've shut off this part by saying, nope, all that matters is science, logic, and materialism. Okay? So we've shut down the right brain. And we only use the left brain today. That's why we are less creative. Right? So that's the argument I will make to you today. All right. Let's continue. All right, the Great Big Bang, the beginning of Greek civilization. All right, so this is Julian Jaynes, okay? And he wrote a book called The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Brain. Okay, the bicameral mind is just the left and right hemisphere. And these two work together. The right is the receiver of the universe, the left is the interpreter of the universe. All right, so he gives an example of this. Okay, why is it that in ancient times, when kings died, we buried them with lots and lots of gifts? We buried them as though they were still alive. And the answer is, from our perspective, they were still alive, okay? The burial of the important dead as if they still lived is common to almost all these ancient cultures whose architecture we have just looked at. This practice has no clear explanation except that their voices were still being heard by the living and were perhaps demanding such accommodation. These dead kings propped up on stones whose voices were hallucinated by the living were the first gods. Okay? Does that make sense to you? We lived in a world where we're using both our left and right hemispheres, and as such, we saw spirits, deities, gods all around us, okay? And we interacted with them, and they gave us both inspiration as well as motivation. Okay, and so this is a Viking ship burial where a king is being buried with his ship and his horses, as though he was still alive. Okay? Because from their perspective, he's still alive. He's still able to give us his wisdom. This is the cult of the skull, which is what we found in most Neolithic cultures, okay? The earliest agricultural societies. Why? Because they practiced ancestor worship and they believed that these skulls were living and they could help you access the dead in the spirit world and draw wisdom and inspiration from them. This is a book, The Cosmic Serpent by Julian, okay? And he tells us that, listen, if you just do some basic research, this understanding of the universe, where our right brain receives spirits and left brain interprets it in reality, it makes a lot of sense, okay? Because the entire universe is itself consciousness, okay? It's all mind, and matter is just what we perceive. I began my investigation with the enigma of plant communication. Okay, plants are able to communicate with each other. We know this scientifically. I went to accept the idea that hallucinations could be a source of verifiable information. Okay, so if you feel as though a spirit is talking to you, maybe the spirit really is talking to you. And I end up with a hypothesis suggesting that a human mind can communicate and defocalize consciousness with a global network of DNA-based life. All this contradicts principles of Western knowledge, okay? So the entire universe is consciousness. Plants have it, animals have it, we have it, and therefore, if we open our minds, we're able to communicate with the entire universe and draw insight. All right, and he goes on. Scientists know this, and our greatest discoveries came from scientists who embraced the consciousness of the universe. Many of science's central ideas seem to come from beyond the limits of rationalism. René Descartes dreams of an angel who explains the basic principles of materialistic rationalism to him. Albert Einstein daydreams in a tram approaching another and conceives the theory of relativity. James Watson scribbles on a newspaper in a train, then rides his bicycle to reach the conviction that DNA has the form of a double helix. Okay? So it's almost as though a spirit is telling the secrets of the universe to the scientists. So, and just ask yourself these questions, and you will understand that maybe the universe is consciousness, right? So these questions are, sometimes you think of someone and then, boom, that person calls you. Is that strange? Okay, has that ever happened to you? Do you feel as though you're being watched all the time? Do you feel as though you're an actor on a stage? Do you sometimes feel you're compelled to act as though something has taken control of your body, okay? Possession. Why do certain ideas pop in your head all of a sudden? Do you sometimes feel as though something planted an idea into you? What do you have dreams? Where do dreams come from? What do dreams mean? Do you sometimes feel as though you know what someone else is thinking, okay? Is it possible you're sitting with a friend and you know exactly what your friend is thinking, even though you're not talking? Do you think sometimes that you're having a conversation with a friend inside your head, okay? So your friend is not there, but you're having a conversation with your friend. Do you feel as though you have a guardian angel? Okay, I'm sure you're too shy to say this, but I'm sure that you feel as though there is a spirit world, right? Okay, these were not mysteries and questions before because everyone assumed we lived alongside spirits, angels, and demons, okay? Today we ask these questions. Before they didn't ask these questions because everyone just assumed that, yeah, of course, we live alongside angels and demons, and that's why we are who we are. Okay, so let's go to the Iliad, okay? And the Iliad, it shows us how the brain worked at that time. A brain that was both materialistic and spiritual. A brain that understood that we lived in different dimensions, okay? And the gods had more control over us, and the gods represented our emotions and the workings of nature, okay? The Iliad. This is a translation by Robert Fagles. So at the very beginning of the Iliad, okay, Homer says this: "Rage, goddess, sing the rage of Peleus' son Achilles, murderers, doom that caused Achaeans countless losses, hurling down to the house of death so many sturdy souls, great fighter souls, but made their bodies carrion. Feast for the dogs and birds, and the will of Zeus was moving toward its end. Begin, muse, when the two first broke in clash, Agamemnon, lord of man, and burn Achilles." Okay? So the first thing that Homer says is, please inspire me, muse, okay? So what he's doing is not creating, what he's doing is channeling. He's drawing inspiration from the gods, okay? When he's speaking to people, he's saying, I am here as a messenger of the gods. This information is from the gods themselves. All right, so this is the fatal meeting, or sorry, not the fatal meeting, the clash between Agamemnon and Achilles, the first meeting that starts off the Iliad. So Agamemnon says to Achilles, give me your slave girl and get out of here, okay? And Achilles says, screw you, I'm not going to fight for you again. But now Achilles is pissed off. He wants to kill Agamemnon, okay? Agamemnon broke off and anguish gripped Achilles. The heart in his rugged chest was pounding, torn. Should he draw the long, sharp sword slung at his hip, thrust through the ranks and kill Agamemnon now, or check his rage and beat his fury down, okay? So he can't control himself, okay? Rage has overtaken him. He wants to step forward and just kill Agamemnon. As his raging spirit veered back and forth, just as he drew his huge blade from his sheath, down from the vaulting heavens swept Athena. Athena's here now, okay, before Achilles. The white-armed goddess Hera sped her down. Hera loved both men and cared for both alike. Rearing behind him, Peleus seized his fury here. Only Achilles saw her, none of the other fighters. Struck with wonder, he spun around. He knew her at once, okay? So Achilles is a hallucinating Athena. No one else can see her, okay? Pallas Athena, the terrible blazing of those eyes, and his winged words went flying. Why now? Child of Zeus, with a shield of thunder, why come now? To witness the outrage Agamemnon just committed? I tell you this, and so help me, it's the truth. He'll soon pay for his arrogance with his life. So he really wants to kill Agamemnon. Her gray eyes clear, the goddess Athena answered, down from the skies I come to check your rage. If only you will yield. The white-armed goddess Hera spread me down. She loves you both. She cares for you both alike. Stop this fighting now. Don't lay hand to sword. Lash him with threats of the price that he will face. And I tell you this, I know it is the truth. One day glittering gifts will lie before you 3 times over to pay for all his outrage. Hold back now. Obey us both. Okay? So Achilles wants to kill Agamemnon, but now he's being possessed by Athena, okay? And Athena says, stop. Okay? So she urged, and the swift runner complied at once. I must, when the two of you had down commands, goddess, a man submits, though his heart breaks with fury. Better for him by far. If a man obeys the gods, they're quick to hear his prayers. And with that, Achilles stayed his burly hand on the silver hilt and slid the huge blade back in his sheath. He would not fight the orders of Athena, okay? So again, this is not factual. Athena doesn't really exist, but it's truthful in that it gives us insight into how the human brain and the human emotions work, okay? Now what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to write this again in modern prose to show you the difference, okay? Okay, so this is what I wrote myself. Okay, it's bad writing, it's modern prose, but you're able to compare and contrast, okay? I don't need you, get out of my sight, roared Agamemnon. He spat on the ground. Achilles' blood boiled and he reached for the hilt of his sword. He saw all eyes stare at him and he stayed focused on Agamemnon. He counted the seconds and the steps it would take for him to sprint forward and strike him down. His feet grew heavy and his legs grew wobbly. He could not move. He felt the thumping of his heart. Achilles snapped around and walked out of the room. He saw all eyes focus on him, okay? So this is factual, but it's not truthful. Do you understand? It doesn't give us insight into why this is happening. So the Iliad is truthful but not factual. Modern prose is factual but not truthful. So now, as I said, Achilles refuses to fight. The Greeks are losing the war. And so the Greeks beg Achilles to come fight. Achilles says no. And he sends Patroclus to figure out what's going on. And Patroclus comes back and says, let me fight Achilles. Okay? And at this point, Achilles should just be like, we'll fight together, or don't go, Patroclus is too dangerous. Instead, he says this. So he pleaded, lost in his own great innocence, condemned to beg for his own death and brutal doom. Okay, he is Patroclus. And moved now to his depths, the famous runner cried, no, no, my prince Patroclus, what are you saying? Prophecies? None that touch me, none I know of. No doom my noble mother revealed to me from Zeus. just this terrible pain that wounds me to the quick. When one man attempts to plunder a man his equal, to commandeer a prize, exulting so in his own power. That's a pain that wounds me, suffering such humiliation. That girl, the sons of Achaia, picked her as my prize, and I sacked the walled city, won her my spear, but right from my grasp he tears her, mighty Agamemnon, that son of Atreus, treating me like some vagabond, some outcast stripped of all my rights. So the Greek army is about to destroy, and Achilles is concerned about his own pride. Okay, he's a very selfish person. Agamemnon stole his girlfriend, and he's pissed. Enough, let bygones be bygones now. Done is done. How on earth can a man rage on forever? Still by God, I said I would not relax my anger, not till the cries and carnage reach my own ships. So you strap my splendid armor on your back, you lead our battle-hungry Meridians into action. And now, in fact, the black cloud of the Trojans blast down on the ships with full gale force, our backs to the breaking surf, but clinging still to a cramped strip of land, the Argives lost. The whole city of Troy comes trampling down on us, daring, wild. Why? They cannot see the brow of my helmet flash before their eyes. Oh, they'll soon run for their lives and choke the torn beds of the field with all their corpse, if only the mighty Agamemnon met with me with respect, okay? So the Trojans are attacking them because he's not in the battlefield. But if he were in the battlefield, the Trojans would just run away, okay? Now, as it is, they're fighting around our camp. No spear rages now in the hand of Diomedes, keen to save the Argives from disaster. I can't even hear the battle cry of Agamemnon break from his hated skull, but it's man-killing Hector calling his Trojans on, his war cries crashing around me. Savage cries of his Trojans sweeping the whole plain. Victors bring the Argive armies to their knees. Even so, Patroclus, fight disaster off the ships. Fling yourself at the Trojans full force before they gut our hulls with leaping fire and tear away the beloved day of our return. But take this command to heart, obey to the end. You can win great honor, great glory for me in the eyes of all the Argive ranks, and they'll send her back, my live and lovely girl, and top it off with troves of glittering gifts. Once you have whipped the enemy from the fleet, you must come back, Patroclus. Even if Zeus, the thundering lord of Hera, lets you seize your glory, you must not burn for war against these Trojans, madmen lusting for battle. Now about me, you will only make my glory that much less, okay? Me. All Achilles cares about is me. Patroclus, you can go into battle, but don't win too much glory. Do not outshine me, okay? And because he says this, what does Patroclus do? He tries to win all the glory for himself. He engages in a duel of Hector, and it costs him his life, okay? So it's Achilles' fault this is happening, and he knows it. All right, so the psychology here is just so insightful, so deep, so striking. So let's use an analogy to understand the psychology, okay? Let's pretend John and Jill are boyfriend and girlfriend, but they have a fight, like boyfriend and girlfriend do, and they break up, okay? But they long for each other, but they don't want to apologize to each other, okay? So Jill tells her best friend Jane to talk to John to try to get him to apologize, all right? And then Jane talks to John, and John says, you know what? I've had it with Jill. I'd much rather date you because you're more beautiful and you're more, reasonable. And then Jane is really excited because Jill is prettier than she is, right? So she runs back to Jill and says, hey, John asked me to go on a date. Maybe I can use this opportunity to convince him to apologize. And then Jill says, okay, go date him. But what if you do? Don't kiss him. So what does Jill do? Right? So this is reverse psychology, right? Okay? So Jill knows that if she says this, Jane's going to kiss John. And Achilles knows that if he tells Patroclus, don't win too much glory, Patroclus is going to win a lot of glory, right? And so what happens, of course, is that Patroclus dies, and now Achilles can now enter the battlefield and win all the glory for himself. And that's what happens, okay? He kills Hector. He saves the Greeks. But then he goes crazy. What he does is he ties Hector to his chariot and he starts riding around the walls of Troy. It is a war crime. It's disgusting. It's hideous. The Trojans are going crazy, but the Greeks are like, we don't want this, man. The gods are like, what the hell is going on? Okay? So this is just shocking. It's just a mutilation. It's torture. All right, so now we move to the end of the Iliad. And at this point, Priam, the king, cannot sleep because his son, Hector, is being mutilated by Achilles. Achilles can't sleep because he cannot forgive himself for the death of Patroclus. And so he takes it out on Hector. Okay, and the gods are watching this, and they're kind of disgusted. The games were over now. The gathered army scattered, each man to his fast ship, and fighters turned their minds off thoughts of food and the sweet, warm grip of sleep. But Achilles kept on grieving for his friend, the memory burning on. And all subduing sleep could not take him. But not now. He turned and twisted, side to side. He longed for Patroclus' manhood, his gallant heart. What rough campaigns they fought to an end together. What hardships they had suffered, cleaving their way through wars of men and pounding waves at sea. The memories flooded over him, live tears flowing. And now he lied on his side, now flat on his back, now face down again. At last, he leapt to his feet, wandering anguish, aimless along the surf and dawn on dawn. Okay, he cannot sleep, he's depressed. Okay? He is racked with self-guilt. He cannot forgive himself for what has happened. Flaming over the sea and shore would find him pacing. Then he yoked his racing team to the chariot harness, lashed the corpse of Hector behind the car for dragging, and hauled him 3 times round the dead Patroclus' tomb. And then he rests again in his tent and leave the body sprawled face down in the dust. But Apollo pitied Hector, dead man though he was, and warded all corruption off from Hector's corpse, and round him, head to foot, the great god wrapped the golden shield of storm, so his skin would never rip as Achilles dragged him on. And so he kept on raging, shaming noble Hector, but the gods in bliss looked down and pitied Priam's son. They kept on urging the sharp-eyed giant killer Hermes to go and steal the body, a plan that pleased them all, but not Hera, Poseidon, or the girl with blazing eyes. They clung to their deathless hate of sacred Troy, Priam and Priam's people, just as they had at first when Paris in all his madness launched the war. He offended Athena and Hera, both goddesses. But Zeus, who marshaled the storm clouds, warned his queen, "Now, Hera, don't fly into such a rage at fellow gods. These two can never attain the same degree of honor. Still, the immortals love Prince Hector dearly, best of all the mortals born in Troy. So I loved him at least. He never sinned with gifts to please my heart. Never once did my altar lack its share of victims. Wine cups tipped and the deep smoky savior. These are the gifts we claim. These are our rights. But as for stealing courageous Hector's body, we must abandon the idea, not a chance in the world behind Achilles' back. For Thetis is always there, his mother always hovering near him night and day. So, would one of you gods call Thetis to my presence, so I can declare to her my solemn sound decree? Achilles must receive a ransom from King Priam. Achilles must give Hector's body back. Okay? Does that make sense? So the gods are fighting over what to do, and then Zeus says, you know what? Let's just broker a peace between Achilles and Priam. Okay, so Priam agrees to ransom back Hector's body, and Achilles agrees. Okay, so again, we can write this in modern prose, and we can eliminate the gods. But what you'll see is that it's not as powerful, it's not as intriguing, not as truthful. Priam cannot sleep and toss in his bed. His wife and his children come one by one to console the weeping king, but to no avail. His servants try different sleeping potions, and one by one they fail. In the middle of the night, he screams at the moon and tears at his graying hair. Priam aches for Hector and feels guilt and remorse for failing his son. Trojan spies watch Achilles drag Hector's body day and night. They take turns spying, and they know that Achilles cannot sleep. They report this news to Priam, and this gives him hope. He sends an emissary to the Greek camp, and Agamemnon agrees that it is Priam's right to ransom back his son, as is a custom of war. Even after the rage of Achilles, Agamemnon sends a servant to talk with Achilles. Achilles does not hear Priam's offer, but he nods his head anyway, okay? So it's less powerful, it's less truthful, it's less interesting, okay? All right, now comes the most powerful part of the Iliad. Okay, this is actually when Priam and Achilles meet for the first time. And so what happens is that Priam is snuck into the tent by Hermes, and the majestic king of Troy slipped past the rest, and kneeling down beside Achilles, claps his knees and kisses his hands, those terrible man-killing hands that had slaughtered Priam's many sons in battle. So the king has the opportunity to kill Achilles, but chooses instead to kiss his hand and submit before Achilles. And this submission destroys the pride of Achilles. Okay? It's an emotional battle, duel between Priam and Achilles, and Priam has won. awesome as when a group of madness seizes one who murders a man in his own fatherland and flees abroad to foreign shores, to a wealthy noble host, and a sense of marvel runs through all who see him. So Achilles marveled, beholding majestic Priam. Okay, that's what Priam has done. Priam is like a fugitive who's wanted for murder. He escaped, and he should be a slave, but somehow he's become wealthy. Okay, so by submitting himself before Achilles, Priam has changed the destiny of the world. His men marveled too, trading startled glances, but Priam prayed his heart out to Achilles. Remember your own father, great god like Achilles, as old as I am, past the threshold of deadly old age. Now doubt the countrymen round about him plague him now, with no one there to defend him, beat away disaster. No one, but at least he hears you're still alive, and his old heart rejoices, hopes rising day by day, to see his beloved son come sailing home from Troy. Those words stirred within Achilles a deep desire to grieve for his own father. Taking the old man's hand, he gently moved him back, and overpowered by memory, both men gave way to grief. Priam wept freely for man-killing Hector, throbbing, crouching before Achilles' feet as Achilles wept for himself. This is the first time Achilles can now cry. Okay, he could not cry before. Now for his father, now for Patroclus once again, and their sobbing rose and fell throughout the house. They've forgiven each other. Why? Because they love their people, okay? So Priam saw Hector in the face of Achilles. Achilles saw his father in the face of Priam. And because of their love for others, they found love for each other. So love is the unifying force of the universe. Love is what allows us to forgive ourselves and forgive others. Okay, and this is the tremendous insight of the Iliad, okay? And to demonstrate to you how powerful this insight is, let's run a scenario, okay? Let's do a thought experiment. Let's just say you're driving a car with your wife and your child home from a restaurant, okay? And you've had too much to drink, and then you hit a car, and your wife and your child died, okay? That's the first scenario. Second scenario is you're driving home, and then a drunk driver hits you, killing your wife and your child. It's not your fault. It's the drunk driver's fault, okay? In the third scenario, you're arguing with your wife and you're not really watching the road, okay? Then a drunk driver hits you and kills your wife and your child. Okay, these are three different scenarios, right? Let me ask you a question. In which scenario are you less likely to forgive the drunk driver? 1, 2, or 3? 1, it's your fault. 2 is it's his fault. 3 is it's his fault, but it's also your fault. Which one? It's number 3, guys. Okay? Why? Because you cannot forgive yourself first, all right? If you cannot forgive yourself, you can't forgive others. And guess what, guys? In real life, it's always number 3. It's almost never number 1 or number 2. So forgiveness is something that we encounter every day. All right? Every day, we make mistakes, and because we can't forgive ourselves, we can make even more and more mistakes. Okay? That's a problem of forgiveness. And it's the deepest problem in human society. And so what the Iliad tells us is that the real struggle is not for power. The real struggle is within our heart. The real struggle is between ourselves. If we forgive ourselves, we can change the world, right? If we forgive others, we make the world a better place. Because Priam forgave Achilles. Achilles was able to forgive himself, and they made the world a better place. Okay? That's the power of the human heart.